John, I know you don't like media to talk about media on the panel, but I think with the
You heard
changes,
that from somewhere?
I heard that from you before the panel. But I think one of the things that's interesting to me is looking at all the changes that they made that are more media friendly and how hard all the media is working to integrate and absorb all these features. And you wonder down the road, does this turn out to be a good thing for us or a bad thing for us to become so reliant on a source of traffic like that?
Well, it's Facebook and Twitter are the new printing presses, right?
Exactly.
And we don't own them anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary to see what the power that they have, how much we rely on them to. And you can see it, Dan Frommer, who was at Business Insider, left, started Splat F, and wrote a post saying that the way his traffic followed him to his new site was through Twitter,
Exactly.
Facebook. And so it's essentially the new printing press.
Speaking of networking, let's take it back to the enterprise for a moment and talk about
I really love
non-social
this enterprise.
networking.
You really like
Can we talk about something interesting?
A couple of us up here actually love enterprise technology.
Emily, he just wants me to be comfortable.
So we got Cisco, we got Juniper, we got HP, others. How does the balance of power shift in 2012? Does Cisco have a comeback? Does Juniper catch contagion from this? Does HP get its head out of HP and make
So
3Com work?
I think, look for one of those guys to get acquired.
Oh, which? Huh?
Well,
Wait, who's going to get acquired?
I think the most difficult position, it's a very challenging position to try to come from the network part of the stack and control a bigger part of the whole IT operation. Cisco has certainly tried to do that, getting into all these market adjacencies, all the acquisitions, certainly tried to get out of the box of being the enterprise network provider. It's a challenging place to come out of and to get a bigger mind share with IT. You also have people who are really trying to consolidate ownership of that enterprise IT stack. So is it inconceivable that even an Oracle could buy one of these companies? Could an Oracle buy an EMC? Do they need to be in storage? Do they need to be in networking? You said to be bold and predict.
That is
so
bold. Any
maybe-
one of those would be the biggest tech acquisition of all time.
These are the kinds of things that may happen because you're coming to the end of an entire era of computing with client server. It's had a good 15, 20-year run. You're moving to a very different services-oriented approach of which cloud is sort of the leading edge of that. And markets consolidate very rapidly when you get to the end of an era. So you're going to see that within the enterprise IT space, but you're also going to see it in the cloud space because IT shops don't want to deal with 55 cloud providers. Someone's going to stitch these together into more coherent, integrated application offerings, much like Microsoft did with Office or CA did with sets of technologies that they acquired. So I'd look for that on that side as well. I think there'll be consolidation on both fronts.
The other interesting enterprise thing is when you look at the rise of sensors. We're going to have more and more sensors all over the place in our clothes, in our cars, in our roads, in our homes, and Nest, for example. And I think enterprise and cloud is going to be fascinating when you start to look at how that's going to be the central hub for all these things. These things are not going to have computers on them. They're going to rely on the cloud to do that. And I think it's going to create a whole new product category for these enterprise companies.
So it seemed like earlier this year the drumbeat was really getting kind of loud for John Chambers. I spoke to many analysts who were like, I think his time is up. I mean, he's been in this job for 16 years, things are not going well, and then he initiated this big kind of massive turnaround effort, thousands of layoffs, and they actually had a pretty good quarter last quarter. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he can really kind of keep up that momentum and finish what he started.
What do you think?
The challenging thing for Cisco was the management structure they imposed on themselves. This
What were
Councils
those
and
things
boards?
called?
archaic, labyrinthine
Yeah.
method of getting people to work together across groups. Humans can't work that way. And once that self-inflicted wound, if that heals, I think they
Do you
can
think,
do a lot better.
so talking about bold predictions, do you think that Apple will buy an enterprise company?
No.
No? Why?
I think they're allergic to enterprise, and
I think they're allergic to acquisitions. They haven't made an acquisition.
They may be
bigger
allergic
than
to
$4
acquisitions.
billion.
They're not allergic to enterprise. It's a huge part of their business now.
no, but it's an accidental huge part of their business.
Yes, but it's still a
They
huge
build
part of their
consumer
business.
products that sneak into the enterprise. I don't think they buy an enterprise company. but that's just me.
You're not going to buy an enterprise company anybody's ever heard of. I mean, Apple makes smart acquisitions. They're generally small companies that basically let Apple fast forward in the direction they were going in anyway. So they're not going to buy a large company, but I don't think it's completely unthinkable they might do something.
What kind of enterprise company might they buy?
Well, potentially in the mobile, in the device management and security area, because this is a huge need for enterprise right now that's not really well met. And I think that could be a real opportunity for them.
Interesting. Anyone else? What kind of enterprise company might Apple buy? Well, let's talk money.
Cisco.
Move on. I mean, there's tens of billions of dollars on corporate balance sheets of companies like Cisco, IBM, Oracle, Apple, which we're talking about now. Is 2012 the year when they finally start to put it to work?
Well, that's why I asked about the enterprise, because I don't know what else they can spend their money on.
Media.
Okay, but and even media companies are not a lot of money. I mean, realistically, in today's age, they're really not.
Yeah, but somebody could buy, I don't know.
And would you,
ABC.
if you were one of these companies, would you want to buy a Netflix or a Hulu? I wouldn't. Not with the one-year deals they set up, and I'd be like, no, thanks. Maybe buy ABC.
AT&T?
Maybe buy a cable company?
I would buy Sprint.
Buy a carrier?
Yeah, I would totally buy a carrier. Sprint, what's Sprint's market cap? 34 billion or something like that? It's like,
Yeah, and they're stuck in a really weird spot because of Clear right now. So in the next year, they're going to need an out. So yeah, if anybody Sprint.
Or maybe buy a tower provider?
should we all chip in and buy Sprint?
Yeah, let's do it. Anybody else?
Anyone else? Anyone else want to throw in on
I'm
this?
all in.
So is 2012 the year, though? Do you think the cash goes to work?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and there are reports that say this is already happening. And I think partly it's because, again, that consolidation at the end of an era, there's big changes happening, and they're not, enterprise IT shops can't deal with the number of companies they're dealing with today, right? So somebody has to stitch these together better. I'd also look at the carriers are an interesting one because they actually have this very strong relationship with enterprise customers and can play a huge role in this whole movement toward managed and outsourced services. They've been relatively quiet in that area. But these could be the dominant cloud companies of the future, right? These are the companies that are already making hundreds of millions of dollars in managed hosting, managed services, which is essentially cloud. They could become a portal for many, many cloud companies to make it much easier for enterprises to deal with that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see an AT&T or Verizon business be much more aggressive in the way they deal with enterprise and maybe even buying up companies to help augment that.
Here's my twist on the whole acquisition possibility. I think because 2012 is an election year, and because there's so much political uncertainty, we actually don't see a big acquisition of a U.S. company. I bet your repatriation doesn't happen, and we see big acquisitions of overseas companies, which the regulators
You think
might not
American
care
companies
about.
will buy overseas companies?
I do.
I think
Yeah.
it's the other way around.
Ooh, who?
Like who?
Well, I mean, you look at some of the. I mean, the question is not necessarily by who. It's that exists now. I think it's by who that these people like Yuri and those guys are investing in, right? That there's a tremendous amount of money at stake in Russia and China and Europe that is being invested in enterprise for one thing, but in a lot of these companies, and I think that they have the money to be able to do it. I don't know who they're going to buy. That's
So in what area? I mean, what's the most interesting area for them to go after then?
social. Why wouldn't a Russian company buy Path, for example, or something like that? I'm not saying that they're for sale, but I'm saying why wouldn't these companies are overseas? Everyone's trying to be. I mean, I've traveled all over the place over the last few months, and everyone's saying, "Oh, we're going to be the Silicon Valley of Europe or the Silicon Valley of China or whatever it is." Everyone wants to be that. What's the best way to do that? Acquisitions. So why not do it the other way around?